We are joined by political analyst Professor Bheki Mngomezulu. Prof, perhaps let's talk about just what's happening in our country politically that's now obviously spiraling out of control, it would seem, and it started off in KZN. Many people calling for President Cyril Ramaphosa to guide them, to lead the country in making comments around the issues around the arrest of the former president. Let me get your reaction now to what we are currently seeing in KZN and in parts of Johannesburg.
No, thank you very much, my sister, and thank you for having me. Honestly speaking, from where I'm standing, I think that our leadership has been overtaken by events because there were times when they had all the opportunity to try and arrest the situation. Right now, the situation has gotten out of hand and it's too difficult to contain it right now because people have been engulfed by anger. And under normal circumstances, once someone is either angry or too excited, the reasoning ability will definitely go down. So it will be difficult for now to try and enforce the rules because then if you do so, in fact, the situation will escalate. So I think that our leaders have failed us, honestly speaking, because we should have arrested the situation long time ago.
President Cyril Ramaphosa perhaps has an opportunity tonight when he addresses the nation over COVID-related matters. What are some of the things that he should say, particularly as it relates to those who are seen to be pro-Zuma?
I'm not optimistic, my sister, and I have reasons for this. Under normal circumstances, you would expect leaders of this country, including the top six of the ANC, to take precautionary measures when something like this is about to happen, and then make sure that it doesn't arrive at the situation where we find ourselves in right now. Because when this whole thing started, there was a deafening silence. And people listened to what was being said by the courts of law, and they looked at what was happening, and they compared it to what had happened with other people, and they came to the conclusion that former President Zuma was not afforded the same treatment as other witnesses that appeared before the Zondo Commission. And obviously then anger started building up. So if then our leaders were to come right now and say they want to take action against those who are protesting, the question will be, where were they when this whole thing started? Under normal circumstances, we are in a democratic state, which means that people have a right to express their views. But then if they feel that their views are ignored, you cannot control their anger. Once they are angry, they forget about all the rules. They forget about the Constitution. It's unfortunate, but that is the reality we are faced with right now.
Prof, this perhaps becomes even more sensitive because we know that the Concourt is due to hear that application of rescission by the former president. What is likely to happen should he lose yet another court case, given the violence that we are seeing currently in KZN and in parts of Johannesburg, even though we're not sure in Johannesburg if those protests that we've seen are related to what we have been seeing over the past couple of days in KZN?
You know what, my sister? There is this thing called patriotism. And right now, this is what we need more than anything else. And all the role players have to be governed by patriotism. If we are not patriotic about this country, we are going to act in a way that is going to take this country into the fires or into the ashes, as we have seen happening. So basically, then all I'm saying here is we have our judiciary, which is theoretically speaking supposed to be independent. But in reality, I'm not too sure if I can vouch for that. But under normal circumstances, we would say our judiciary is independent. If that is the case, it means that when they have a case in front of them, they have to look at that case based on the evidence presented to them and then analyze it using their experiences as lawyers and judges and then come to a conclusion. What we saw happening with the judgment against former President Zuma, those who were watching it saw that it was riddled with emotions. And I don't think you have to be a lawyer to understand that you cannot bring emotions into a judgment. Number two, you cannot make a judgment relying on media briefings or media statements. You have to rely on the court papers. To keep saying that the person we are dealing with is a former president who has been in office on 2 occasions, for me, it's immaterial. We are dealing with a person you are accusing of having been in contempt of court. Just stick to that and then make judgment based on that and nothing else. The moment you bring in all these other issues, then people are going to start questioning your judgment and then, of course, question your impartiality. I think this is what has brought us to where we are right now. Had they just decided to stick to the law and apply the law the way they should, I don't think we'll be having this situation. And then lastly, after having found him to have been in contempt of court, they were presented with 3 options. One, to give former President Zuma a suspended sentence. Had they done so, we wouldn't be seeing what we are seeing right now. Then the second option would have been to still find him guilty, but then give him a fine, and then we wouldn't be where we are. But they opted for the last option, which was to incarcerate him, and that is what has brought anger. Let alone the fact that Justice Zondo took the matter straight to the Constitutional Court. And people are asking the question, where were the lower courts where the case was supposed to have gone and then was supposed to go through up the ladder right up to the Constitutional Court? If you have the Constitutional Court as your first port of entry, then there is a question, what then happens once the Supreme Court, the Constitutional Court has made the ruling? Because it is the apex court, you can't go beyond that. Those are some of the things where I think our judges have also failed us.
Now, Prof, moving away from the legal matters, the Court also has said that it had given the former president ample opportunities to come and present himself, and he chose not to. But moving away from the legal point now, there is also this question about the violence that we are currently seeing just months before we are due to go to the polls, the municipal elections. With that said, what is likely to happen, taking into account what we are currently seeing now in terms of these protests leading up to these elections? Should we even be talking about going to the polls in October?
Truth be told, my sister, if this situation is not arrested, the question of elections will definitely not arise. Because you and I will agree that you cannot hold an election under the current political situation where there is turmoil. You have seen what has been happening in KwaZulu-Natal, and you have seen what has been happening in Gauteng. If we were to have an election under those circumstances, obviously then there are people who would be scared to go to the election, even if they do qualify to go and cast their votes. And then those who are driving to the election areas or to the polling stations will definitely be afraid to do so, because we have seen some cars being stoned on the road, having done nothing. So I don't think that if we were to go for an election right now, it will be something feasible. The first thing to do is to arrest the situation. Once the situation is arrested, calm will prevail, and then we can have an election. To call for an election, having not addressed the situation, for me would be suicidal, because definitely some lives will be lost unnecessarily. And unfortunately, those lives that will be lost are people who have nothing to do with this whole thing, but then they just find themselves being in the crossfire, and then there will be the innocent victims. And those who have arrested the situation will still be safe. That is the sad reality.
You speak of turmoil, and you also speak about this situation having to be arrested. Well, a lot of experts and political analysts have actually said that this turmoil is as a result of the internal turmoil that is currently playing itself out inside the ruling party. Perhaps that's where the focus should be. Talk to me about what we're currently seeing within this factionalism that we are currently seeing within the ANC, and how it's played itself out, which is probably why the nation, or should I say KZN, is currently burning at the moment.
That is a very important question, my sister. And to be honest with you, I'm pessimistic that the squabbles within the governing party, that is the African National Congress, which is loved by the multitudes of people, by the way, I'm pessimistic that the squabbles are going to disappear anytime soon. And the reason for that is simple. when you think that a particular matter is under control, something else comes up. And this feeling that there is purging of some sort by one faction over the other, then of course creates an untenable situation. And then if these things happen, obviously then you cannot expect the country to unite. Of course, the president, when he assumed power, he shot himself on the foot when he stated that he was going to unite the party, he was going to unite the country, he was going to correct all the wrongs that were made in what he called the nine lost years. And I was asking the question, where was he? Because he was part of this whole 9 years that were allegedly lost. So what we need right now is people who are going to be truthful, and truthful to themselves first, and then truthful to their comrades, and then truthful to the country. Unless we take that route, I don't think these factions are going to end. Because anything that you say, whether you're talking about the National Working Committee, whether you're talking about the National Executive Committee, whether you're talking about the different PECs in all the 9 provinces, the same story applies. There is factionalism. What then has derailed this particular matter is that initially people were denialists. They refused to accept that there are factions. And I said one time that if you are sick, the best way to recovery is to admit that you are sick first, and then others will come with solutions, and then you'll be cured. If you say, I'm not sick, obviously then no one is going to assist you because you said you don't have a problem. If the leadership of the ANC says, we have a problem, we've tried to address this problem, we've been unable, can somebody else please assist us? Then that will be the best approach, because you will have admitted that you have a situation which you can't control, and then you are seeking assistance from elsewhere. And then that will be something wise, in fact. Some say it will be a sign of cowardice. I don't buy that. If you have a problem and then you bow down and then you humble yourself, you seek assistance, you get assistance, and then you move on with life. And then people are going to celebrate once a calm has prevailed. But at the moment, this factionalism for me is nowhere going to be, and it's going to be with us for quite a long time.
All right, Prof, thank you so much for your time this afternoon, Professor Bheki Mngomezulu.